really interesting guests on for you today, and we'll be going through some CVs, but also some other situations. As always, we say in the beginning, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat, because we will have a section to go through some questions in two segments of the show. But without further ado, let's welcome on George.
Hi,
hey, George, can you hear us?
Guys? Can you hear me?
George. Yeah, all good, man.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. How are you?
Oh,
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I just got a thing saying my internet was unstable, but nice to see you, though.
Yeah, good seeing you, man.
I think my internet's not good.
How's everything going?
I might do one thing, and I might change onto a hotspot, because I think my internet's not very good.
No worries, that's all right. Me and Azhar will just go through some stuff here, and then kind of we'll go through it. Yeah, you do that, and we'll kind of look through some stuff.
Okay, nice. I think I've just switched. I hope that's good. If you can hear me.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, nice.
So, Azhar, we're going to be looking through George's CV today. Do you have any immediate comments? Comments initially.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, first time I've seen this. So
yeah, we haven't had time to actually look through the CVs prior, just because of technical difficulties. So
that's okay. No worries at all.
First impact, we're looking at this.
Okay, so the first thing is I like that you quantified, that you came in the top 1%, all of that kind of stuff. I think that's good. Personally, one thing that I do see straight off the bat is you want to change some of your formatting.
Okay.
What I mean by that is you use different fonts in different places, it looks like or font sizes. So the size of the text for Canada exchange student is quite different to the rest of the text.
Yes. Yeah. I see that.
Yep. So I changed that slightly. Additionally, I wouldn't give too much information in terms of the education stuff. So I would maybe, because I think you're giving, 3 different metrics. I would maybe go, top 1% out of X many people with an 81% average. Second one, top 5 percentile of X many students with a 78% average. Maybe don't even mention the 78% average, because you've already done it above. And then mention, a straight 4.0 GPA in the top 1% of, X. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I personally wouldn't include the statement of intent.
Okay.
Just because when you're trying to tell them, about these kind of things, about that you've got a proven track record of leadership, all those things, they're things that you want to show them more than they are things that you want to say about yourself. So I'd remove that personally.
Okay.
So from me, I think in terms of some of these experiences, basically what I want is to know the impact that you had and have that potentially quantified, and have a brief explanation, a very short, somehow explaining to me why your personal impact caused that. And I want to be able to cause a good thing, and I want to be able to believe it. Like, I want to have some details in there that allow me to get into that. So what I kind of mean is, here you said, oversaw the generation of executive team management and structure, relied on my ability to inspire a group. So here, 2 things are lacking. The first is, what does this mean? You oversaw the executive structure. What did you kind of do? Like, what was the end result? And secondly, how did that come about? By which mechanisms did you do that? Even if it is your ability, like obviously it is, like everything you do is part of your ability. What facet of your ability, or, what thing did you do, or how do you use certain skills to be able to inspire that group? And what impact did it have? What change did it have at the end of it? Similar to this, redefine the moderating system. So here you've told me what you've done, so I like that. But I want to know what impact it had. How did redefine the moderating system change this business? How did it have that impact? But I feel like there's a lot of really interesting stuff you could say about that. But when I first see that, those are my initial thoughts.
Okay, nice. I mean, CVs it's so tricky, isn't it? Trying to fit things onto such a small, but no, I think they're really, really helpful piece of feedback, actually.
Yeah, I'd echo what Amir says. I think it isn't a case of space, it's a case of making sure that everything on there follows a structure. So the structure should be, what did I do? What was the value of what I did? And if possible, some kind of quantifying to show the benefit of that. So anything that seems generic or anything that you think someone who wasn't there wouldn't understand, change it. So for example, leading member of organization with more than 35,000 volunteers in network, that isn't an action, if that makes sense. Whereas if you mentioned conducted, I don't know, conducted onboarding of this many people, which led to an increase in membership from 20 to 35,000 in the last 6 months, I'd be impressed. Because I know, what did you do? What was the value quantified? Same thing with everything, to be honest. Like if you presented analysis to the CEO, what was the analysis you presented? So be very specific and mention that it was adopted, but also tell me what was the value to the firm, your analysis resulted in them changing a strategy, which resulted in, I don't know, X benefit, and try and quantify that as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Az has kind of given kind of enough examples there. I'm going to go to some of the leadership experience now. In terms of the lawyer stuff, this is basically the beginning of a really good first bullet point. This hasn't been finished off. I love that you selected out of 1,500 candidates. I just have no idea what you've done. So just kind of explaining some of that would be incredibly useful. I really like the fact you manage the LinkedIn. You increased the followership 150%. It'd be nice to know from what to what, just to kind of if that's an impressive figure, it will be very useful to include. Things that are intangible, I would avoid putting in, because you do this in a few places. Demonstrating confidence and self-belief. You need more than that. You need some degree of tangible impact, which can accrue in the real world through these things. But to someone who doesn't know you personally, it's very hard to believe you when you say stuff like that, which is why it's best to avoid, even if it's true.
Yeah. Okay. I'd say the exact same thing with that, in terms of where you've gone and said employed effective synthesizing of information. What else was that? Got up a minute slightly?
Sorry.
Relied on my ability to inspire a group, required strong communication skills. I'd remove those and make that what they realize about you,
Yes.
Yeah, so it's the show don't tell, right? You've told me this requires communication skills, but if you show me about a time that you've done something and I'm like, this is a damn impressive thing, it must have evidently required excellent communication skills. That's a kind of thing that, so for example, I noticed at the bottom, your public speaking, selected 1 out of 40 students, or top 40 students out of 900, or, as in, maybe 2 points. The first thing is an experience shows really well what you've done. That's the first point, and just link to that. Building upon this, the way that you've written it makes it sound less impressive than it is.
Okay.
The way that you've written it is someone gave you a pat on the back because you did a decent speech. Because oh yeah, you were highly commended, mate. Yeah, fair play to you. What's actually happened is you at the Change the World MUN 2020 award have specifically received an award basically, but the way that it's written makes it sound as if it was just some bloke saying, do you know what? Fair play, George, fair play.
Okay.
That's kind of, do you see what I mean when I say that?
How would you reword it, Amir?
So I would say, chosen as the top 40. I would actually, it's the phrase highly commended, and the fact it's in thing. I would say, if it has a specific name, or given special award for top 40 students out of 900 at Change the World MUN 2020. It's literally just the fact that it's highly commended, and it's in speech works like that.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point.
As I don't know if we have maybe a minute left. I don't know if you have any other general comments, or George, if you have any questions.
I mean, I'm just really grateful. I think you're right about the intangible stuff. It's just difficult sometimes trying to think of ways in which that can be quantified, if that makes sense. But I agree with you. I think that you've especially with the lawyer thing, you don't know what I've done. It's just said that it was selective. But apart from that, yeah, I really appreciate your time, both of you. Thank you.
No worries. I mean, just to give some hints on that. It's gonna be really difficult, but the way I do it is, again, that showing, not telling. So I'd kind of try and hint at, if there's something that I would be like, oh, this is the impact that was had. And then to prove that it's true, kind of give a little bit of detail. So it's like, maybe you I don't know, let's pick something here. You increased efficiency by, let's say, 50%. And here you increase it, and you did that by refining the moderating system for the Zoom calls, impacting 100 people. So it's like the thing that you've done, or some changes happened, and then a little bit of detail about exactly how it took place, kind of to help there. But I don't know if anything else to say on that.
Very simply, and this is the way I do it, right? When you go off this call, for each of your bullet points, ask yourself, what else, right? So when you say you did the LinkedIn posting, ask yourself, okay, sure, so I got increased 150%. What else? Oh, I increased it from 500 to 750. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. What else? My daily engagement went up by 25%. What else? And when you do that, then you can go, created and implemented a social media campaign on LinkedIn, which resulted in a 300% increase in a company following from, 600 to 1,800. Daily engagement rates up 15% from start.
Yeah.
So doing that for everything, because it will become so easy, man. Because you have all the numbers in your head. You're like, of course, this is what I did, right? You can do that with. There's another thing. Led the team of 10, right? So what? So as a result of us doing the team of 10, we finished the partnership stuff, right? We partnered with 50 organizations or 25 organizations in the last 6 weeks, which was, more than anyone else, or it was 6 more than our company had forecasted due to this strategy that I employed. And they're like, wow, so you go in the specifics, make it succinct, and you'll have a really strong CV.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys.
No worries.
Say well.
Questions, anything? Okay.
No. I really appreciate it. Best of luck for the rest of them.
Cheers, man. All right. Have a good one. Take care. All right, awesome. If you do have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We're just going to start Sahil on early, just a little bit, and just bring him in.
Sahil. I'm interested to see if this is Sahil I'm thinking of.
Hey, man. How's it going? Can you hear us?
Yeah, it's good. Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Afternoon.
Yeah.
So, what do you want to talk about? You mentioned several things in our message, but what's your number one priority? What kind of stuff do you want to really discuss?
My priorities right now, interview preparation.
Sorry?
Interview preparation, yeah.
Oh, interview prep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And is there anything specific within that, or is it just interview prep as a general rule?
As a general.
All right, fab. Azhar, do you want to begin?
Okay, sure. So we got super general. So these are just going to be general interview preparation tips, right?
Yeah.
So the first one is know the company, right? So this is one of the biggest mistakes I see is the point at which you get to interview, you really want to give yourself the best opportunity as possible to get the role. So do all of your research prior. And what I mean by that is try and anticipate or find out online if you can find any of the questions that they normally ask at the interview itself. I personally, what I do is I create a huge list of all these questions that they might ask me. And then when I was applying to practice with Amir, he'd ask me questions of random orders, or so you can do this with a friend. And I would create answers to some of these questions. Then, he'd tell me where I was messing up or my answer wasn't convincing. And then I'd now start creating, actual answers that I was going to use when I spoke to them in the interview. So this is more for like competency type interviews rather than case interviews. So that's something that I'd recommend straight off the bat. Additionally, try and find someone at the firm on LinkedIn. Chances are, if they're a graduate, or they're on a placement scheme, they probably know quite a lot about the company. So when you talk to them, you have a much better understanding of, what is the company about, what is their culture, how are they doing things, recent developments, than if you try doing, 10 hours of research by yourself. So that would be my first 2 tips. Amir?
My additional tips are, as with many things, doing things on your own is difficult. So I would form a group of people who you know and you trust, who really want to achieve the same kind of job success that you want to do. Maybe people, out of university right now, maybe people who are looking for a job. And after every single interview, kind of dissect all of the interviews together. Recall the interview, recount it, explain what happened, explain the process you went through, the answers you gave. Really analyze the changes. If you were speaking to a partner, did their face change when you said something? Were there any hints that something was like not the right thing to say? Take that and critically self-reflect and try and ask them genuinely, is this a good answer? I said this, do you reckon that was the right way of approaching it? And see what changes you need to make in order to make that happen. But the other thing I'd say on top of this is have this concept of trying to predict things. As I said, we want to try and predict the questions that came up. I would always try and analyze, why did you not see certain things coming? Like, there are certain things that we have when we do, and the question, and we try and predict for them. We try and try and prepare. Was there anything you were unprepared for, and why do you not see it coming? And what can you change about your process to make sure that you can take advantage of as many unknowns as possible and counteract for them in the interview itself? Separate entirely to all of this, I'd say is structure and confidence is probably the biggest thing you can do in terms of the way you speak. So when you practice with a friend, speak slowly and speak with structure. So when they ask you, often it's really, really useful, genuinely take a 10-second pause, because even if it's like a long pause and they think it's a bit long pause, if you give a great answer, by the end of it, they'll forget entirely. So I would always, maybe make a couple of notes and jot some stuff down. But I'd be, okay, you have your answer? Okay, that's a really great question. I'm going to have 3 responses to that. 1, 2, and 3. The structure means that you don't ramble. You never trail off your sentences. It means that you come across extremely confident. So having that kind of stuff can be really, really, really useful.
Yeah, I have another question, that how to boost confidence.
So is this in the interview or just in life in general?
In life in general. Yeah, especially in the interview.
So which one?
Especially in interview.
In interview?
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of ways to boost confidence. By the way, great question. I think this is the kind of question that a lot of people don't ask, so I think it's a very good question. For me, I think the first one is practice, right? This is the biggest mistake that everyone makes, is when they practice with a friend, right? They're like, oh, I might say this in the interview, I might say that, maybe I'll talk about this. The way me and Amir practice, Amir would be like, Azhar, tell me, what do you think is the firm's strategy on this? And I would be like, I would pretend he was genuinely my interviewer. And I'd be like, okay, so the current strategy is this. I think some of the drawbacks are here, and I recommend approach this, and these are all my reasons why, and he would play along, pretend he was the interviewer, ask me follow-up questions. And the thing is, too many people never properly practice up until they actually get into the interview. Or have you cut out there for a second? Amir, have we lost the hill?
I think we might have just for a little bit, yeah.
I'll give a second to return.
In the meantime, if you do have any questions you're watching right now, feel free to pop them into the chat, and we'll be answering as many as possible soon. So if you do have those, put them into the chat right now. So I think Sahil's connection is kind of just...
He might be coming back just now, 1 sec.
Is he coming back in?
No, we've lost him.
We've lost him permanently. Okay. Azhar, do you have any final comments on just kind of confidence and how you can, because Sahil can watch the replay, confidence, how you can kind of augment that and kind of get more of it, maybe in a general setting?
So, so I think the big one is The big one is understanding why your confidence is low, right? Like that's the biggest
Well,
reason.
I'm having some network issues, so I got disconnected.
No worries, no worries. What we'll do, Sahil, is I'll quickly answer your question because we're running
Okay.
slightly short on time. So
Yeah.
the
Thanks.
practicing properly means that when you go into an interview, you know you're prepared. Like you don't want to be that the first time you're talking formally and with structures in the interview, right? And you haven't thought about it. So that's a big piece from me. And the other one is do the research because you will subconsciously know that you have not taken the time to know what questions they might come up with or have prepared answers. So, they ask you the wrong question and you have no idea, you will look like you have no idea, right? Whereas my favorite interviews have been ones where I've created a list, I know the question, they ask me the question, I've said it 10 times already, I changed my answer around a little bit, but it's so obvious that I'm confident in what I'm saying because I've already said it before. I know that it's correct. I've tested it with a bit. So do that with a friend, to boost that confidence, and the preparation's key.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, in terms, go on.
Okay, so my third thing is how to practice my communication skills.
Communication skills. Yeah. So this is a really, really interesting one. So in terms of comm skills, I'd say that a lot of people try and assume comm skills will come through reading, but it's like a practical art. You can never learn dancing from the internet. So how can you learn comm skills through reading articles? Like obviously they'll be useful, but you actually have to practice doing it yourself. So practice giving speeches in the mirror, record yourself doing it, and pretend like you're really speaking to an audience and really see how you're doing. And all these tips you read online, really measure to yourself, like, are you actually doing them? Do you have eye contact? Do you have, hand gestures, all that kind of stuff? Make the list, but then do the practice as well, I think is a really, really big thing. And then make sure to actively reflect upon whether you're truly implementing all of these things that you read online.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Perfect. Best of luck with all your interviews, Sahil. We hope that was helpful. And keep us updated with how everything goes.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Awesome.
Right.
I'd love to connect you on LinkedIn.
Definitely.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks a lot. So shall I disconnect?
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye, man.
Awesome. So if you do have any questions, do indeed put them in the chat. But we have a few that we're going to kind of get through. Some of them. Okay, cool. So the first one from George is, hey guys, I wanted to ask Amir, what is your method of structuring an answer in an interview? Is it literally to have 3 points and say that, or is it to reiterate what you've said? So Azhar, do you want to answer first, and I can give my answer as well?
So how do you structure your points in an interview?
Yes.
That's an interesting one. The first thing I'd say is I think you need to immediately understand the question before you can structure your point. So the first thought that you're having is, how do I make sure I answer the question? And then, you might go, I have this many points. So I usually say how many points I have. So I'm like, okay, there are 3 main ways that we can approach this. The first way, and then I go into that point, I explain it. I then go into the second one and then the third one. And then I usually make some analysis and I go, in my personal opinion, I think the first point is the most important, etc. Yeah, that's how I usually do it.
Yeah, generally I kind of agree with Azhar. Whenever someone asks you a question, normally there are loads of ideas that pop around in your head. What I would say is, here's how I personally do it. Actually, it might be even worth having a piece of paper right next to you. So what I do is kind of have that piece of paper next to me and kind of, write out, okay, I want to make point 1, point 2, and point 3. And then I'm like, okay, well, is there an overarching theme here? So then I'm like, okay, so I take 5-6 seconds to do that. It's a bit awkward during that time, and even if I'm jotting down notes. And I say, oh, okay, so overall, I think we should do X. I think we achieve X maybe in say these 3 ways, or I think there are 3 things we should think about, or to be specific, there are 3 things I want to talk about. And that kind of gives me that structure to be able to focus on all of that, and kind of gives you the confidence, because essentially you don't always have to do this, but if you need a shortcut to have confidence, you answer questions like this and make sure you're answering the question. And it gives you that framework to fall back on if you know, to stop you rambling or to stop you from forgetting what it is that you're saying. Cool. Go on. Sorry, how's it going?
Exactly, agreed with Amir. And just to give you like an example of how to do that, if I'm just making this up on the spot right now, but if they were like, you know, what would be your sales strategy to hit, you know, 2,000 sales of this item by that time, I would go, okay, so, you know, we have 3 different strategies or 3 different channels that I'm currently considering. The first channel is, you know, the B2B market. So it's selling directly to other organizations within the X industry. The second one is, you know, through an online campaign. So a lot of online marketing, so paid marketing. And then the third one, and then you'd explain what the third one is. And you go, so now if I go into a bit more detail, this is how we do the first one, the second one, the third one, then your final analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. George just followed up there. So, and more specific to himself, what about sometimes particular actions are difficult to quantify? For example, you change the system of moderating. How can you quantify that?
Great question. So the first thing is you can't necessarily quantify everything, I think is an important distinction. Quantification is incredibly useful because it's the easiest way for someone who's not involved in the situation to see the impact that you had, right? So make sure you do quantify as much as you can. But in places where you can't quantify, option A, ideally estimate. And option 2, show me using your text that in a different way that moderating system had value. You know, like what was the impact and the result of you creating that? And can that be conveyed then in a way that doesn't have a quantification if there's no way to do that?
Yeah, so to kind of give more insight there, why do you quantify? What's the point? And ask yourself this of all the advice you get. Why do we do certain things? For what purpose? The purpose of quantifying is so you can very quickly convey the impact that you had to somebody else so they know that this is impressive and they're like, okay, cool, that was great. I know because the numbers say so. The same result can be achieved through other mechanisms. It's just more difficult. You have to put more thought into it. So for example, if you're moderating, you say, well, they had this system at the workplace and one of my roles was to increase efficiency. And as part of that, I looked at the way they were doing their Zoom, for example, and you notice this very specific way of doing things. And this is what the way was. And as a result, you know, because people didn't have to spend as much time in the meetings, they got more work done or something, you know, or you save this much time or, you know, something like that, that really quantifies, shows me what you did and why it was impressive. Like if the logic that you use was like, oh, that's actually a really clever way of doing it. That kind of thing can serve the exact same purpose as quantifying in the context.
And lastly, you can actually quantify in a lot of areas that you don't think you can. So it's not always revenue. So I'm not sure I fully understand what the moderating system is, but if I was like implemented a moderating system which resulted in, you know, a 20% increase in the number of, or 20% decrease in the number of like bugs or failures or whatever, resulting in saving, you know, 10 hours of, you know, 10 team hours per week, you know, increasing resource allocation. I'm like, fair enough, that's really impressive. So try and think in all the different ways within which you can quantify, because it's not just revenue or profit or sales, or it can be, you know, efficiency in terms of like labor hours, all of that kind of stuff.
Cool. I think we've got a minute left. So we'll answer Joe's question. I'm starting to think that the fundamental aspect of productivity is managing your sleep. What do you guys think about sleep cycles? Do you have any routines or tips?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't necessarily know if I agree about the sleep, firstly, purely from the sense that I think if you're on low sleep, you're going to kill your productivity, like on a consistent basis, right? But that doesn't mean that someone who's getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep is going to be hella productive. Although I definitely do think it's important. I think the bigger thing is if you're the kind of person, and there's nothing wrong with this, it will just kill your productivity. If you're the kind of person who doesn't have like a general time by which you should be asleep or should be awake, generally speaking, you know. So mine is, you know, I sleep anywhere between 11 and 11:30, and, you know, I'm waking up slightly later. I'm waking up at like, you know, like 7 to 7:30 now. That means that my day is predictable, and it means that, you know, I know what I'm doing in the morning. I know I can plan my day tomorrow. Whereas if, you know, it's 1 a.m. and I haven't planned it, you know, I'm just on Facebook or something, chances are I'm going to wake up at like 9 a.m. the next day, and now I've missed planning what I was going to do in the morning. So the reason why sleep cycles are important is if you don't have set times and you wake up and sleep, you can't plan your days and you have no routine. There's no predictability.
Yeah, what I'd say during sleep cycles is, as far as I'm aware, we as humanity don't know too much about exactly how sleep works, or there's a decent amount of research, but not just, it's not 100% conclusive in every avenue. There are these like wristbands you can get which actually actively measure how you're sleeping and how your sleep is doing, and they connect to an app. That kind of thing can be really useful if you believe sleep is particularly pertinent for you. But that's kind of my general thoughts so far. We've got Siddhant in the waiting room. He's kind of coming in now.
Hi, Azhar and Amir. How are you doing?
Hey, Siddhant. We're doing well, man. We're doing well.
How are you? Oh, I'm just on the wrong page.
Yeah, how are you doing, Siddhant?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Oh,
so sorry, I take it you wanted to go through some of the stuff on your CV. Just before we get into it, what are kind of your goals? Where do you want to get to? What kind of job would you love?
So first of all, thank you for having me here today. So in regarding to ask for your question, so so right now I'm in my final year of BBLLB, and I'll be graduating in June next year. And I want to get into strategy consulting, and I think that's something that interests me. And I feel that my knowledge of business and law will actually help me make good business decisions, and at the same time ensure that those decisions are lawfully compliant. So that's how I see myself in a few years.
And just a quick question: do you see yourself working in India, or is that or in Germany, or which kind of locations do you see yourself mainly working in?
I would love to go abroad and like work abroad, but at the same time, like if I do not get an opportunity to go abroad straight away after I complete my degree, I don't mind staying here in India and like working for a year or two, and then getting my MBA from a college abroad, and then maybe try for good companies abroad. But my aim is to go abroad.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, just looking, I'm just going to talk as a very, very high level overview. I think that your CV actually has some really, really good aspects, but some things I might change a little bit. Just from the highest level overview, you have a lot, obviously it makes a lot of sense, a lot of law related things, and that's the first thing you kind of see. If kind of consultancy was what you want to go into, stuff like leadership experience or things where you demonstrate excellent communication skills is really vital. And having that is going to be quite important. One thing that's really going to put you in excellent stead is this edtech startup that you created with the law school. Now that is really, really impressive. If you apply to consultancies, I would consider maybe putting this slightly higher or putting it somewhere it can be seen kind of quicker. Because I read this and I see, oh, this person's just a lawyer when I'm reading this. So when I see something like that, it actually really puts that into great perspective. The second thing is like, where you apply will really change how you do your CV. If you apply in India, that'll be very different from applying somewhere like the West. So if you apply in like the UK or US, for example, you would have to have gone to it's difficult to not have gone to a UK or local uni and kind of apply through that kind of mechanism. So maybe the best thing is to apply locally. I don't know, Azhar, if you have any comments.
Not there, no.
I mean, generally.
Oh, in general?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start with a few basic comments. The first one I always do in any CV is the formatting itself. I think the formatting here is slightly confusing to me. just because of the hierarchy. And what I mean by that is your titles such as education, work experience, additional activities are not in bold, but your company names are in bold. So for me, I would maybe, switch that around or make it very clear, where the sections are starting, aside from just the line going across, is the first thing. I would personally remove the career objective, and try instead to demonstrate that within the CV itself. One thing that I do want to say, I think that you do use numbers quite well. I can see, that, the client, debt restructuring is good. The raised revenue of around 1 lakh is good. I would do some rewording though around a few different places. So what I mean by that, for example, is so when you say filed 23 trademarks and raised revenue of around 1 lakh, right? Is that because you did the trademark applications?
Yeah. So for each trademark application, that particular company charges a particular amount. And so the number of trademark applications I successfully filed in the IPR department, I calculated accordingly, and I put a quantitative value to it. So that's an impact to what I've done.
I see. So I would try and make the links between A, B, and C clearer. So like I did this, which resulted in this, which was the value. So something like filed 23 trademark applications across X many clients, which resulted in an increase in company revenue of 1 lakh. So make it very, very clear what resulted in what. One thing which I did think that you might want to talk a bit more about is I feel like you're underselling your foundership experience in Legal Maxim, because what you've done, right, is you've told me what the startup is about. You haven't told me why you've done what you've done is valuable, if that makes sense.
So I should put it in a way that it shows the impact. Now for I could not really put the impact there right now because it's just been like a week since the entire website has come up. So maybe I was thinking of later putting in a value in terms of the amount of engagement I'm getting, or in terms of the number of page views that I'm getting on my website. Would that make sense? Or do you think I should do something else about it?
So I think that's a great idea to talk about the engagement. But I also, sorry, why did you mention that you might not have stuff to put on there?
Pardon, I couldn't hear you. What were you saying?
You mentioned that you might not have additional stuff to put there in terms of value. Why was that?
That's because the website has come up only, it's been just a week, and it's very difficult for me to put a value that is being given to these people who are coming to the website itself. I mean, in order to put a quantitative value on the entire website's the working, I need to give it a little more time, to understand how the market is taking it and what's the response.
Oh, I see. Okay, so what I'd say in response there is, I'm sure there are loads of incredibly impressive things that you've done as part of the startup that you can still mention even before that does kick off. You can talk about, how you created like an onboarding process. And after, holding all of these different pitches or negotiations, that you were able to bring on, an advisory board of some of the most reputable law experts in the country. And that's, saying I did this, which added huge value to the platform, Additionally, you can talk about how you implemented really, really effective processes and solutions, which meant that you were able to create a resource bank of 4,000, different resource bank containing legal publications, and increased efficiency or, whatever, for example. So there's a lot that you can say, even though necessarily you haven't got the numbers to back it up yet.
Okay, so I understand you're talking more in terms of the organizational structures that I created or the operations that I manage in order to make this happen. Exactly. I get your point.
Exactly. Organizational structure is key. There are certain places, the last thing I'll say before I hand over back to Amir, certain places within which you are being slightly vague, which you want to change. So if you go slightly further up, Amir, yep, ever so slightly, yep. So devising organizational structures for the innovation and marketing team sounds very generic. Because I don't actually know what you did there. You know, same with the building a global network for your online forum. I kind of want to know how much have you grown that global network by, you know, for example. And if you're going to talk about the organizational structure, you know, explain what did you do, how did you create it, and what was the benefit of it, what was the value add, so it's not generic.
Okay, so elaborate a little more on this particular point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, make sure that, like, if I read that and I don't know you and I don't know what you've done, I have no idea what devising organizational structure means, you know? Yeah. And building the global network, I have no idea why that's impressive. But if you told me that you built a global network of, you know, 78 different aspiring consultants over the last 2 weeks, and that engagement on the forum is increased by 48%, I'm like, that's pretty impressive, you know?
Okay, so I should maybe put in like what this exactly talks about is, so the entire forum consists of, I think, around 120 members right now. And there are, and we've been connecting the aspiring consultants with around 20 expert consultants. So that's how this actually functions. So maybe I should talk a little more about it. I think that's what you're saying.
One thing I want to reiterate, though, just to clarify, is the advice that I'm giving you now isn't advice on that sentence. It's advice on the entire CV. Like, do you think there's any place within the CV within which, you know, ask yourself for every single sentence, ask yourself, is it clear what I did? And if it is clear what I did, is it clear what the value is, right? So that's a question that you have to keep asking yourself at every single sentence, and revising it. Sorry, Amir?
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't saying anything. So, Azhar, are you handing over to me?
I can do, or I can keep going.
No, you can keep going. It's fine.
Okay. Okay, happy to do that. Depend on ability to raise. I personally wouldn't have so many things in bold, particularly because my eyes don't know where to look. Because like, normally I actually recommend that, you know, having almost nothing in bold is what I normally recommend. I normally recommend, you know, having the firm itself, the date itself, and if you really must, then you can have the role name in bold, or the numbers in bold. But generally speaking, I would recommend against it, because I don't really know where to look at this point. Yeah, additionally, and, you know, one of my last comments is, try not to have two entirely different things put in the same bullet point. So if you go slightly further down, Amir, slightly, keep going. Yeah, so in the same sentence, you've put devising organizational structures and then also increased engagement. So those are two very different things that probably warrant its own bullet point, or you need to combine it with the first bullet point.
Yeah. I think that's the only reason why I could not actually elaborate more on what do I mean by organizational structures, because I wanted to put a number there, like a quantitative value to the bullet point itself. So that's why, and like I didn't, and just one more question. So should I be having like 3 bullet points in under a particular work experience, and is it okay if I have like 2 bullet points under the other, or it's better if it's a little more like symmetric?
In my opinion, it doesn't matter. Generally speaking, though, and this is a question you'd have to ask yourself, in my opinion, it's better to have, you know, 3 or 4 work experiences that you have like 4 bullet points for, and like well explain the value that you added, than having, you know, like 6 different experiences and you having like me not really knowing exactly what you did in all of them, you know? So generally speaking, try and find out what your most impressive experiences are, the ones you want to really talk about. So recent ones, you definitely want your legal maxim in there, some of the law ones, and try and go into a little bit more detail, I'd say. You can definitely merge a lot of your bullet points together.
Okay. I'll definitely look into it.
Awesome.
Thank you. I just had a question for me.
Yeah, of course.
So you just had a quick look at my CV, and do you think is it possible for a person like me who's doing BBA and an LLB to have a shot at a consulting company like McKinsey or any other top 4 strategy consulting, in the strategy consulting department? Do you see a place for someone like me?
So let me caveat my answer before I give it. The first thing I want to say is I'm not sure exactly how it will work in India, and the system might be different. So I would recommend seeking out someone who works at these companies based locally as well, because it will be different. I think the degree will not hold you back. Generally, from what I've seen, consultants don't mind which degree you work in. Your legal maxim is excellent and really puts you ahead, and that is something that is really, really good. What I personally want to see a lot more of is some sort of leadership experience where you've kind of highlighted leadership experience. So I think, from my experience looking at this, I think you've done a lot of stuff. So it seems that yes, it seems very possible. I think with a couple of changes and laser sharp focus, it's very possible. But again, the way the Indian system works may be different to how it works in the UK here. So my personal recommendation is seek out those people, see what their specific advice is, see how they've done it. But yeah, I think it can. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the feedback.
Awesome. No worries, man.
All right, take care. All right, fab. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. But as I've kind of got a question kind of come in from somebody. Anonymous. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah.
No worries, man. Right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, so as I was saying, if you have any questions, feel free to put them into the chat. But we've got like 2 or 3 minutes now. As we've had a question kind of anonymously come in. If you want to learn a new skill, for example, programming, learning a language, for example, how would you recommend going about it?
Oh, well, that's a great question. How would I go about it? So this is probably not what you intended when you asked me the question. The first one is I'd give a piece of advice around how not to go about it, because I think this is a really big mistake and one that a lot of people make, is you get straight into it. That's actually the worst thing that you can do. So, for example, if I want to learn, I'm just gonna give you an example of dancing. If I want to learn how to dance, the last thing that I'm gonna do is, straight away get search dancing, and buy an online course and just start doing that course. You want to do some research, in my opinion, around a couple of different, ways that you could learn that skill. You might want to, find talk to a few different people, around their experiences learning that skill and the different approaches that they recommend. And then, once you've got that, I'd get into it. Amir?
Yeah, definitely. I want to specifically hone in on this programming example. What I want to give you is my formula for self-teaching how to become an excellent programmer without any formal experience. So here's what I do. First thing is identify why you want to do it and what you kind of want to build. Have a passion about something you want to build. Like have a physical thing that you kind of want to aspire towards, or maybe it's a startup, maybe something you want to build, like that you can imagine, like maybe it's a little app, whatever it is. Then what you do is identify what it is you kind of want to learn. So you might want to learn Python, maybe be Java, whatever, and look up online the tutorials for that. So someone came to me recently and said they want to build a web app. I recommended they learn Bootstrap, which is kind of like your standard way of coding a website, a really standard package. I tell them, okay, the problem right now at this stage is you don't know what you don't know. So if you're getting into programming, you have no idea about the scope of what it is you're doing. Type into YouTube, intro to Bootstrap or Bootstrap example. Now, it'll probably be a 2-3 hour video, but sit through it and split your screen. So on one side, you see the tutorial, and the other side, you're going through it as the person is going through it. And that way you memorize what's going on and literally do it with them and live that tutorial with them. But once you've done that, you've basically, now what you've done is you don't know a lot of stuff, but you've gathered the scope of what exists within this. So now you know what you don't know, like you know what the big thing is. So at this point, you have enough information to actually tackle stuff. What you should do is now look at the documentation or look at specific tutorials and just start building what it is you want to build. So you've gained that base information, start building. Maybe it's a little side project, maybe it's an app. Start building it, and just when you have a hiccup, Google it. Look at Stack Overflow, you'll find these tools. But because you have a general introduction to the framework, you're not entirely lost. You just can't see very far. But when you know where it is, the direction you're going in, you get there, your field of view kind of, it defogs a little bit, you Google it, and you get to your destination iteratively through that. So it's a really good way of learning programming. And you also learn to debug equally at the same time because you're working on a real project. So it's a really, really good way. I personally wouldn't use like a course myself. This is how I think like one of the best hands-on way of learning programming is.
Yeah, one thing I want to add in general for skills is biggest thing that happens, and this happens to me, it happens to everyone, is you start a skill, you do it for like 3 days and you stop doing it. You miss like a day, you never get back to it. You're like, I'll do it later. When you're starting, consistency is incredibly important. So make sure you have the right motivations for learning that skill in the first place. And then make sure that, you dedicate like a certain amount of time regularly to enhance that, because, you're not going to get it instantly. And it's going to be, that compound effect of progress over time.
Awesome. I definitely agree with Joe's advice here in the chat as well. Tanya's just come in now. She's the final person whose CV we're looking at today. Or rather, it's Tanya's iPad. So Tanya, we can't hear you at the moment. Oh, hey.
Yeah, hi, great.
How
Hi, good evening from India.
Good evening. How's everything going for you?
Yeah, it's great, thank you.
No worries. So I was going to jump straight to the kind of very roughly the CV. We haven't had a chance to look at it because of for everyone today. But is there anything you particularly want to go into, any kind of careers that you really want to work with?
Okay, so right now I'm in my first year, so I'm just trying my ways out. I'm trying for consulting, maybe. I'm not sure, but I look forward for research and consulting. Yeah, these are the two aspects that I like.
All right, fantastic. Azhar, do you want to begin or shall I begin?
Why don't you begin?
Yeah. So the first thing I think when I look at this CV is just in terms of formatting, there's too much information on this page for my eyes to digest. I'm not sure if it's the font size, but just as an individual, it's just so much blocks of text and it's very hard to kind of read what's happening. So what I would do personally is maybe increase the font size a little bit, remove some of the content, we'll have a discussion on that in a second, and change that around, because I think you've got some really good content. It's just about maybe shortening it down, increasing that font size. The second thing is, I think not all of these are created equally. I would remove the Google Analytics qualification because it's an online qualification. And I think, to be honest with you, they're not sufficiently well respected in just generally to warrant being put in the same thing as your entire degree. So that's kind of one of the main things that I would say. But the rest of this is quite good. Personally, I haven't seen this in a table format, but I'm not opposed to it inherently. I just think it looks slightly different, but I don't mind it too much. I don't know, Azhar, if you have any other kind of comments for this.
Right, let's get into it. So, Amir, could you go back to the top?
Sure.
Okay, so first thing is I'd remove the date of birth.
Wait, there's date of birth?
It's at the top.
Okay.
The second thing is I personally am not a fan of tables. So that's a personal thing. I agree with Amir. I would remove the Google Analytics. I think, your 97.25% is incredibly impressive. Maybe worth, like, in brackets next to that, telling me, how you did in terms of the cohort. So maybe you came third out of like 200 people or something like that, for example. So I'd mention that. I agree with Amir in terms of there being too much text, but I think specifically with that, it's more the case that it looks like there's a lot to read. So my first recommendation is have better spacing in between different segments. So, add a space, for example. And the second one is, we can cut down a bit of text in different places, which we'll get to very shortly. The next thing I'd recommend is, firstly, a caveat. I don't know very much about, research roles, so they might be different. But in terms of consultancy, I think one thing that, in every CV that you want to do is demonstrate the value that you brought to the company. So I would strongly recommend that you talk about, firstly, what you did, which you've done, but what was the value of that? And if any way that you can quantify that. Because one thing I think is slightly lacking is, the quantification of you going, as a result of me doing this, it resulted in this outcome, like, I don't know, like 20% increase in this, for example, or, as a result of the critical analysis of public policy, this resulted in the policy leads doing this, like making it very clear what the outcome was.
Oh yeah, I just want to pick up on, I feel like the segmentation here from internships to position of responsibility could kind of change a little bit potentially. Maybe stuff like work experience and leadership experience, or work and leadership, or like work and achievements, can be kind of more useful. But again, a small thing. Pick on MUN here. I really like that you organize such big events. That to me is very, very impressive, but it never goes further than that. I take it, and my guess is that to do these events were a logistical nightmare to organize, is what I'm guessing. But to me, it's not explained how you did that. Like, I would love to know the method you went about, how, how the teams that you evidently ran, like how you organize this, like, and some of the process involved. This kind of stuff I'd cut down to one line, that you organize 4 events, in total, with over 1,000 delegates between them, like, and then talk about how you did that. Give me some insight, the teams you led, stuff like that. That really tells me, because the value added is clear. You organize incredibly difficult things. How you provide that value is then the kind of next step to go further than that.
Yeah, completely agreed. I think you could cut that down to one line.
Okay, so I have a question, like how many bullet points should be there in each heading, because there is a lot of information to put in. So I'm very unsure about what is the ideal length of it.
I think it depends, right? Because it depends on how many experiences you're putting in there. You want to give as many bullet points as possible. So I'd say, 3 to 4, for your most important experiences. And the ones that are less important, you might just want to have like 2, for example, or completely cut some of them out. In terms of segmentation, your positions of responsibility, so that's like your leadership experience, right? I would change the name from positions of responsibility to something like leadership experience or something like that. I would move the awards and achievements to the bottom, and I would push the what is currently called positions of responsibility further up. In certain areas, I would like you to be a bit more specific, because I can see there's great content there. I just want to know a little bit more. So, for example, when you mentioned headed the team members and volunteers, a total of 35 people, how did you lead them? I don't know what the outcome is. Whereas, if you tell me something like managed a core team of 35 people over a 4-week period to successfully, I don't know, organize a TEDx conference to 500 people, I'm like, fair enough, So going into a bit more detail is incredibly important, and constantly asking, why was this impressive, I think is really important.
Yeah, definitely want to pick up on that. A lot of this is kind of like, sorry, Azhar, can you just say one more thing?
Yeah, sure. So for example, again, prepare the roadmap of maintaining discipline in a school of 8,000 students. I'd reword that to be like, created, organized, and then successfully implemented a roadmap with senior management in a school of 8,000 students, which resulted in, I don't know, incidence of X falling by 63%, for example, you know?
Yeah, I mean, just want to pick up on that in terms of, you know, the kind of stuff here. I want to know a bit more about how you led them, because you use terms like successfully led, and that doesn't mean anything. So I want to know about either a change that happened or something that was new. So what I'd love here is, was there anything new that you did that the previous leadership did not do that was sufficiently different? And then what outcome, what result did that have, right? You want to be like, is this generally impressive? Or, you know, ask yourself, so what? You've done this, so what? Like, what's the point of it? What does it show me? Like, as an employer, like, what's the point? And if it was like you had a new change, or you changed a system, or there was something that you implemented that was different, and the outcome that led to that to me is always incredibly, incredibly impressive.
Yep. So one last thing, because I think we've slightly overran. I mean, if you go back to the bottom,
Yep.
I'm going to show you, Tanya, how to play, like, do the so what game. So I'm going to pretend I'm you. I'm just going to make stuff up. Yeah. So if I say, you know, I was responsible for organizing all the inter-school and academic competitions, a total of 20 events. I'm like, so what? Right? And I'm like, well, actually, you know, we organized 20 events, which was 5 more than last year. Okay, so what? A lot of these competitions, were expanding, you know, the reach. We actually did it in 4 different cities versus, you know, the previous years. All of a sudden you can go, you know, expanded the number of inter-school and academic competitions to 20 events, which was 4 more than the previous year, and implemented across, you know, 4 different cities in comparison to 1. So you're constantly saying, so what, right? While all the information I just made up, you can definitely do that and find more and more detail there.
Also, like, where do I put my scholarships? Like, the scholarships that I've got, where do I put them? Because I don't really see a space for them.
Is this
Like,
educational scholarships?
Yeah, educational scholarships.
I would put them right at the top, personally. Don't know if you agree.
Okay.
I think they can. I think they probably work on top. At the same time, they might also work within, like, your awards and achievements. So either one can work, in my opinion.
Yeah, what I would like to see is that, you know, BA Economics, for example, received full scholarship of value, blah, blah, based on academic merit. Also, so, you know, out of this many people, I think that would look really good near the top.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, works great.
Awesome. Best of luck with everything, Tanya. I hope we answered, like, some of your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so insightful.
Right.
Perfect. Have a great day.
Take care.